And welcome, everyone. Appreciate you being here. We're out on Twitter Spaces, and I'll be taking your calls there later on in the show. But first up, we're going to welcome Dr. Simon Goddek here. He had some concerns about the unusually rapid peer review process for a COVID PCR test. He raised that question, and antics ensued, both in terms of trying to determine what happened in the peer review process. He felt that it might have been rigged, and he has quite a story to tell us. He's a PhD in biotechnology. He's a science journalist. His Twitter handle is Goddek, oh boy, et al. Goddek et al. Goddeketal, meaning Goddek and his part and his co-authors. You can also learn more about his company at influencer.com. But we're going to get into this, talk more about what he observed. He has been in other countries during much of this, and so it's just so odd how much of this captured the entire world. We'll get right into it after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Welcome, everybody. I'm noticing some increased activity in our Restream chat and also over at the Rumble Rants. By the way, thank you, Rumble, for they gave us a little award here for 100,000 followers. I think we're up to 200,000 now, so get us up to the 500,000 point, and God knows what Dave Rubin will get us for that. But thank you for following us. We appreciate it. I think Dr. Goddek has generated some excitement, as I said, because I'm seeing a lot of activity from multiple sites out there. So thank you for being here. And I will try to take some calls off Twitter Spaces a little later. As I said, Dr. Goddek is a PhD in biotechnology, a science journalist, and raised some questions, as many people were trying to do during the COVID outbreak. And in his case, of course, he was canceled and sent off Twitter. And when he was reinstated, he wrote an interesting thread that caught my attention. And thus, we are able to talk to him today. So please welcome Dr. Simon Goddek. There you are.
Hey, good evening or good afternoon in your case.
Depending where we are, yes, indeed. So tell us the story of what happened. Where were you? And it's just so odd to me that the entire world was captured in this extraordinary mindset, hysteria, let's call it what it was, and some of the things that were perpetrated as a result are just mind-boggling. But what was your story?
So where should I start? So I think the best is to start in 2020. So when COVID hit, I was, excuse me, I was a normal scientist in the Netherlands at Wageningen University. I was doing research on bioreactors, on how to reduce fish sludge and turn this into nutrients. So things probably people don't care a lot about, but it was like my topic. I was doing my job, and then COVID hit, and we were told, okay, there's a dangerous virus, and I thought, like, okay, all right, let's see what's going to happen. And it was like 2020, and I think it was by May when I was wondering, why aren't they talking about vitamin D? Because I did some research on vitamin D in the past, and I was just wondering, why don't they give health advice? Why they just lock us up? Why are they just telling us to stay inside, to use masks, to not go to the sports club, to do crazy things that don't make any sense?
Let me interrupt. Yeah, let me interrupt.
Yes.
Which is that not only that, there was, even at the beginning, there was nasal lavage, there was vitamin D, there was maybe zinc and quercetin, and people could argue about it, but there was things to talk about. There were things we could do, not the least of which were what to do when you go.
If it's a seasonal virus, everybody will be traveling in September again, which was a big mistake. As I said before, I was writing this vitamin D publication, and yeah, I got canceled. Almost canceled because of this. So my university back then received many emails Like, okay, look, there's this Dr. Simon Goddek. He's spreading dangerous misinformation. He has a paper in vitamin D. It's dangerous. And even I got retraction requests for a peer-reviewed scientific paper. And that's when I totally woke up and I was like, okay, it's really not about a virus. It's about something else. And this was around August, September 2020. That was around the time I created, or like I used my Twitter account. I created it in the beginning of 2020, but I didn't use it. And I think my first tweet was in November 2020. And I lurked on Twitter because I was interested in what was going on. Before that, I didn't care. I thought like, okay, it's just like a phenomenon for 2 or 3 months or 4 months. And there would be no more talk about COVID within month, you know. But
Yeah.
they continued, came up with new variants. And I was lurking into Twitter to get information.
And so here you were, you did some research on vitamin D. You're aware of vitamin D impact on health, and it seemed to have an impact, or either an association, if not a causative impact, on outcomes with COVID. Sounds terribly dangerous to me. What in the world? Do you have a theory about why they would take their colleagues, and was it just mass formation psychosis, as some people have suggested, or do you have another theory?
No, I think it was mass formation.
Yeah.
I mean, even though my colleagues at the university, they backed me in the beginning. So at least the colleagues said like, hey, your paper is solid. There's nothing we can say about this paper. But it didn't get the attention it should have gotten, because what we saw, I did some small review on that everybody who had a blood serum level above 50 nanograms per milliliter just even wouldn't get sick. So there's some correlation. There's some very strong correlation, and this was just being ignored. And they pushed for an experimental vaccine. They just were pushing, and everything that could go in the way, which means vitamin D, or I mean, it's a non-go word, but ivermectin also had some good results at least in the review papers, review studies. They were all counter-attacked more or less. So I love this one. And so what happened? So I went on Twitter and I posted my vitamin D paper, my personal vitamin D paper that got peer reviewed, and Twitter banned me for that for at least I think 3 days, and they took it off. And that got me thinking.
Was it in English? Was it in English or in Dutch?
Of course, it's an. I've never written any publication in Dutch. It's like everything we do is in English. So it's an English publication. Just type in Goddek vitamin D and K2, vitamin K2, and you find the publication. I think it's on number 1 of Google, totally at the top. And so it's very easy to find.
Yeah, and so that probably came from this country, right? That I suspect that would be the Twitter itself in San Francisco, and the government agencies that were urging Twitter on to silence anything, which is just so crazy. Super. If you're a scientist, you can't appreciate how odd that is. It's just the contrary of how the scientific enterprise operates. What did you think at the time, and then what happened next?
So it was labeled as COVID misinformation, dangerous COVID misinformation, and then I mean, inside myself, I radicalized, not publicly, but I was getting mad and angry. And why do they silence a scientist with an important message? And the next is I learned about this Drosten COVID protocol paper. So it was protocol. He didn't invent the test. He wrote this protocol. And I learned that the peer review process was very quick. And by the time I was an editor of a quite well impacted journal, and I was looking to the process itself. So I learned that he passed peer review. So the peer review within 3.5 and 27.5 hours. This was the time window. And I was like, this is impossible. I mean, like there's also night in between. So I mean, distract these 12 hours where people sleep, and exactly there. And that's what made me think. And I wrote a thread about it and January 21, explaining how the preview process works, all the steps from submission to the preview itself, to the editor finding reviewers, typesetting, that it takes between 6 months and even 2 years. I've still a paper that I've wrote in the review process. It's 2 years that passed, and 3.5 till 27.5 hours is impossible. It's literally impossible. And I was just stating that. I wasn't even saying, hey, Drosten, you're criminal, you should go to court, you should go to prison. No, I was just stating a fact that this is more or less impossible, or it would be, just imagine, I don't know how athletic you are, but it's like, imagine you running 100 meters against Usain Bolt, and he would do it in 9.5 seconds, and you would do it within 2 seconds. People would say like, oh, Dr. Drew, how did you do that? And you said like, oh, it's
How did
fine,
that
I'm
happen?
athletic.
Yeah.
So it's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah. So the implication is there was no peer review process, right?
I don't think so. I don't think there's no proof
Or
they didn't want to.
And have they published the peer review sort of analysis since that time?
We asked them. We asked them.
Yeah. Of
And
course not.
They said
how
we
about
can't do it because. Should I continue, or do you want?
Please, always you keep going. The back and forth here is sort of, there's a second off. I'll defer to you always.
All right. So what happened is that we asked them to publish it, and they said like they couldn't because they don't want to. They don't want to publish like private data of the reviewers, but all review processes are anonymous. It has to be anonymous. So they lied about that too. So there was nothing they were able to show, and there's nothing they can show because there wasn't a peer process that happened. Otherwise, he would already have sued me.
So now you became sort of internally radicalized, as you say, which I love that term. and did you start campaigning, looking at anything? Did you get more trouble? What happened?
Well, the trouble I got is I got immediately, I think, thousands of followers on Twitter, and attention, and attacked by virologists from the Netherlands, from Rotterdam University and Utrecht University. They were just doing ad hominem, so they were not addressing the facts that I presented. They were just going against me. They were contacting my university. It's Wageningen University. It was Wageningen University. Yeah, and I got dismissed in March, I think 6 weeks later. The official reason
from your
was
position.
From my position, yes. Yeah,
that's the official reason was, how dare you?
Yeah, the official reason was like I ran out of contract, but I got follow-up funding myself. So I was writing the proposal, so I got it myself, the follow-up funding. And I said like, hey guys, I've funding. I got it for the university that I've written in free time. They said like, thank you for the money. We will take another scientist who is less critical. That's what they said, and that's
less
unethical.
Critical. And this is all. And were you saying anything else publicly where they could point at your opinions, and it wasn't just about the vitamin D? Were you taking on the question of, other things that we could do, that we have, repurposing of available drugs, that sort of thing?
No, vitamin D was the beginning, but they were backing me, but that already caused a bit of trouble. And then of course was like all the emails they received, all the complaints, because what I said on Twitter, especially against Drosten and Maren Koopmans, was co-author, and who's the Dutch state virologist. So I think it came from her. Yes, here we go. Yeah.
and that thread, and the thread we just had up, is that something you put up after you came back to Twitter a year later, or was that what got you taken off Twitter?
So this little graphic was what I wrote in the very beginning, my first week on Twitter in 2021. That's why here I said like, in this thread, when I got back in January this year, I was just like telling, look, this is what happened. This tweet went viral in the beginning. This got me in trouble, and shortly after, got fired. And I wrote this funding application, and I got a job with in Norway. So that's where I started working, and I didn't have any issue there because I got kicked off Twitter. so they didn't get any feedback about me. So usually, people, all these, I call them trolls, they always address your employer. but there was no one to address because I wasn't there anymore. I got kicked off for asking a question. I was asking why Bill Gates was investing into BioNTech in September 2019, and I was linking to his foundation website, and I got kicked off for that tweet as misinformation. But I was just like referring to Bill Gates' website. So I was asking questions, and I got kicked off in June 2021.
And as this was unfolding, what did you imagine was happening? How did you interpret all this?
Yeah, I mean, it was clear it was silencing opinion. I went to court here in Brazil because I moved to Brazil because of some more issues I had in the Netherlands, like police at the front door, bank accounts frozen. So very little things that happened. And I was like, okay, this is not the place to be. So I moved to my girlfriend here in Brazil. We lived together. And I was suing Twitter here in Brazil, and I lost, not because the judge said what you wrote could be totally fine, but Twitter can decide who is on the platform and who isn't. So this is the law in Brazil, and there was nothing else I could do. So I just left Twitter.
So do we know what, the thing here is our government got involved in silencing citizens of this country. Yeah. Were you in part of that mess, do you think?
I don't know.
Even though you're not a citizen, yeah.
No, but I asked Elon Musk to at least let everybody have access to our Twitter files, because I would like to know why exactly they silenced me and what I did wrong. I think someday we will have access, but until now I haven't seen anything. The only thing I can imagine is that I was questioning the vaccine, promoting vitamin D, and asking questions about the genesis of the whole pandemic. I think they didn't like that.
So I've had concerns not so much about the peer review process, but about the editorial process. Things are showing up that, go a certain direction, and there's no contrary opinions on various topics, very much like what you experienced. Did you have any more insights into that? I mean, obviously, let's put it this way. It was emergency circumstances. People were taking extraordinary measures. They were pushing therapeutics through. They were obviating the peer review process. If they did that, I'm sure they thought they were doing it because it was such a dire emergency. Okay. But are they going to admit it now? Are they going to look at what the choices they made? Is anybody going to take responsibility and evaluate what happened to see if there's something perhaps we might do differently next time? And did you see any evidence of editorial adultery?
I've seen this, at least for the paper, for the PCR paper. For example, Christian Drosten, the corresponding author, is in the editorial board of the EU-owned journal Eurosurveillance. So it's a journal that's part of the European Union, and Christian Drosten, the corresponding author of this PCR protocol, is part of the editorial board of this journal. That sounds highly corrupt, doesn't it? Yes. So you have to ask yourself, how is this even possible? How is this even possible? And if you then know that Christian Drosten developed this protocol together with his best friend Olfert Lund, and he made billions selling the test, billions US dollars selling the test, that just lets the alarm bells ring.
Was the test okay? Was the test flawed in some way? Do we even know?
So I have another paper. It used the Bayes theorem, and we've seen up to 90% false positives in the Netherlands. So I wouldn't even say that it was okay, at least not with a high cycle threshold. There are many open questions that still remain unanswered, and we keep on asking them, but there's not a lot happening now, but I hope in the future. At least I see the tables are turning in many states in the US, and also in several countries in Europe, like I think UK and Norway and others. So I think we will get answers within the next couple of years.
So I want to unpack something you just said. So you said you use Bayesian theorem, Bayesian reasoning, and high cycle thresholds. Explain to people what you mean by that.
So the problem with the PCR test is, at least in the original Drosten protocol, use a cycle threshold of 45, which is every cycle is like amplifies it by 10, which is an issue. And to say it like that, if I tested myself with a PCR test with 45 on some sand or like particles from Mars, I would probably find them on myself. So you find stuff that's very unlikely to find. So, and
Right.
if you want to find, if you want to create a pandemic, you do this. You create a PCR protocol. You put the CT between 35 and 45, and you test healthy people, because you spread the myth of asymptomatic spread. So that's how you create cases, and that's what they did.
And normally you have what, 20, 30 cycles?
I think 20 until twice many 5 is more than sufficient if you want to show a particle. Yeah.
Didn't it eventually back down to 20?
I don't think so.
Really?
The Netherlands always used a very high one. I don't know what it was like in the US.
And what was the defense? They want to have more sensitivity and at any cost?
There's no defense. They just don't defend themselves. They just ignore them.
Right. Well, I always try to think about the other side of the table. And again, it was an emergency. They were trying something. I don't want to attribute sinister intent to everybody. I want to assume that people are trying their best in an emergent situation. But the point is, the sinister part is bad judgment, bad reasoning, a problem with the editorial and peer review process, and disgusting that they ruined the lives of their peers. Disgusting. So that's for me where they went over the falls. Short of that, I'm like, all right, it's emergency. They were doing things, made mistakes. Now they need to talk about those mistakes, but of course they're not. And then the behavior against people who were raising questions was just disgusting. And should be, where are the journalists? Why aren't journalists writing stories about this, raising questions? You're a journalist. What's happening?
Yeah, I just became a journalist because I was fired again after coming back to Twitter. So I just turned myself into a journalist. I'm just a journalist right now, because everybody can be a journalist, because I'm doing the work that real journalists don't. But if you look at who owns the media, who owns The Guardian, who owns the CNN, who owns German and Dutch media, it's almost all the same people. So I think most of the journalists don't have any other chance than writing what they have to write, what they were being told to write. So there's hardly any criticism, because it's journalism mass formation as well.
You had a job in Brazil you got fired from? What did you do now?
No,
what did you do now, Simon?
So I did nothing. I'm now a CEO of my company. I'm working. I'm writing articles for Brownstone Institute. That's what I'm doing.
No, but what happened? What happened that you got canceled there in Norway?
Oh, I just got Twitter back. So I got Twitter back with 35,000 followers. I lost 10,000 during the 1.5 years. And yeah, I got quickly up to 300,000 now within 2 months. And I got fired just for being active on Twitter, because they received many complaints about what I say. Yeah, you know how it works.
I'm wondering what kinds of things you're saying that are getting you in trouble.
I don't know. I sued them. They didn't want to tell me. They didn't tell me any reason, but just like orally, I was being told external communication, and we know what this means. And they always refer to my Twitter account. There's no single tweet they pointed out, and there's no reason they pointed out. So now I took them to court. That's the way to go.
All right, we are going to take a little break here. And what I want to do is maybe take some calls off Twitter Spaces. So those of you there that want to come up and interact, raise your hand, push the request button, and we'll bring you on up. And you'll be streaming on multiple platforms. Caleb, am I seeing Rumble on the restream? Is that what's showing up there in that red circle? I don't know what that is. It doesn't look like Twitch or Facebook, or is that now YouTube? I guess that's YouTube. I have a new icon for YouTube. So what's happening there?
Yeah, that might be YouTube.
Icon.
There were some strange issues happening earlier, but it wasn't on any of our sides. It was something with the internet where it cut off the stream, but I think it's
I
all
blame
caught up.
Simon Goddek. He clearly is a troublemaker,
Censorship.
and anything he touches, he seems to destroy and turn to, which I still can't figure out. I still can't figure out why that is happening to you. But if anybody else has any questions, I see some hands going up there. You'll be streaming out on multiple platforms. So, and I know we had a minute where Rumble was locked. Again, that was not us. That was happening on the Rumble end. And we'll be right back after this. Springtime is here, and personally, I can get red and irritated skin during these months, especially when I travel. But now I have an extra layer of protection thanks to Genucel Skincare. Genucel's Ultra Retinol, formulated with the most powerful retinol alternative, bakuchiol, and proprietary MDL technology, soothes irritation and visibly targets red, blotchy skin. And the under eye cream, of course, helps hide the bags and puffiness that you can get from travel and just lack of sleep generally. In fact, you might have witnessed the astonishing effects of Genucel Redness Repair Intensive during a recent unplanned moment of our show, repairing my skin within minutes right before your eyes. That is how fast these products work.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com. I've fallen in love with this product at a fraction of the price.
Visit Genucel.com/Drew today and check out the personalized packages from Susan and myself, bundled with our favorite Genucel serums. And remember to use the promo code DREW for an extra 10% off. All orders are upgraded to free shipping. Plus, if you order now, every subscribe and save package gets a free spring spa package with 3 of Genucel's best-selling spa products ready to try in the comfort of your own home. One more time, that is Genucel.com/Drew, Genucel.com/Drew. Over the last few months, no doubt you've heard a lot about spike protein, certainly on this program. The reality is, once lockdowns are well behind us, we will likely still be dealing with the effects of COVID and potentially the COVID-19 vaccines. Therefore, the spike protein may prove to be an important part of our story. With that in mind, I want to introduce you to the Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula. Whether you've been vaccinated or not, spike protein may be something you have become concerned about. Good news is that there's some interesting research on how to potentially deal with it. Studies have suggested that nattokinase and dandelion root are showing some potential in protecting you and your family. Our friend Dr. Peter McCullough and the team at the Wellness Company have the only product on the market that contains both nattokinase and dandelion root. In addition to the nattokinase and the dandelion root, the Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula also includes natural antioxidant ingredients such as black sativa extract, green tea, and Irish sea moss, all thought to help boost immune health. Go to twc.health/Drew to order today. Use code DREW at checkout for 10% off today. Buy gold and get a free safe to store it in. You heard right. On qualifying purchases from Birch Gold Group now through March 31st, they will ship you a free safe directly to your door. Here's the deal. Fed keeps raising rates because it is the only tool they have to keep inflation under control. But it isn't working. You can't spend your way out of inflation. You've seen the impact on the stock market. You've seen the impact on your savings. Hedge inflation by owning gold, whether physical gold and silver in your safe or through an IRA in precious metals where you can hold real gold and silver in tax-sheltered retirement accounts. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied customers. Visit birchgold.com/Drew for your free info kit on gold and to claim eligibility for your free home safe by March 31st on qualifying purchases. Again, visit BIRCH Gold, birchgold.com/DREW. And welcome back. We have Dr. Simon Goddek with us today, a biotechnologist, now a journalist. So, Simon, humbly, I'm a little surprised when I go on your Twitter feed that you would say you don't know why your Norwegian employer would have issues with some of the things you say. So I have questions. Here's something I'm going to read. May I read something from your thread? This is one I am and can read. A lot of them I can't read because I would also get canceled. Hey, Professor Emily Oster, on a scale from 1 to Stalin, how authoritarian do you rate your statement? From back then, Nowadays. So except for these non-inflammatory, and you seem to have lots of opinions about things going on in the United States, which I find surprising. Talk to me about this.
So yeah, I've been calling out some people. So while I was canceled, I made an archive. Maybe that's not a humble thing to do, but I was looking what people were saying, how we were getting discriminated, like they discriminated against us. So I was collecting the worst 500 statements, just like, I love when you guys die, or you guys should die, or we should kill the unvaccinated. And now I was posting them within 1 week. I had like this revenge week, and I was posting the statements. And usually I was asking them in a bit nicer way, I was asking, do you still stand with the statement? Do you still agree with what you said back then? And yeah, I had some scales from 1 to Stalin, 1 to Hitler, 1 to Fauci. They exist, and it's just like to make it more entertaining. But what I think is important that we shouldn't forget who discriminated against us and what they did, and how they kind of put the pressure on those who didn't want to get vaccinated. And I think it's an important thing to do. And Twitter is entertaining, and the way I did it is in an entertaining way. I already got fired.
I completely,
at the time.
1,000% agree with you that it needs to be. We have to learn from this, and we have to remember what happened. There's a meme of myself and Adam Carolla going around on a program we were on where he said, they want to turn the page, they want to turn the other cheek. We should never listen to them again. These are not, anybody in those 500 tweets should never be listened to again. Not only were they wrong, they were dangerous in the way they behave. And as I said before, disgusting. But I'm still a little curious about you. Why the preoccupation with the U.S., so the U.S. leaders? And I that surprised me that you would have anything to say about that, given that you've been overseas the whole time.
Yes, it's quite easy. Because, for example, if you look into the U.S. politics, they have an impact on the whole world. Today, for example, I was saying that I don't like politicians. For example, I made a post, I don't like politicians, but I don't understand why they were arresting Trump and not, for example, Obama or Biden, who caused many troubles in Europe. For example, I'm a European, and Trump didn't start the proxy war in Ukraine just in front of our door. It's in Europe. So of course, as long as U.S. leaders impact the world, I think everybody should have an opinion on that. And
I agree with you. I think it's important for us to remember that, actually. But I was surprised to see county officials and city officials show up on some of your hits.
Oh, you mean
not to say that you were right. You were right. There are pictures of them in various sort of, I don't remember the exact stuff, but yeah, I agreed with the criticism. Trust me, I share your critique of these people. They are definitely people to put in your crosshairs. I don't know how they got there, how an LA County health official got in your crosshairs.
It's easy. They popped up on Twitter. I mean, like if you open Twitter and you open your feed, people pop up. So I have even people like city officials from an Italian city. They popped up with like disgusting tweets that got, for example, 50,000 likes, and then made it viral. So I don't take tweets that make it viral. So just viral tweets that really reach many people. I'm asking these people, why did you do this, in different ways? Sometimes it's the Stalin scale. Sometimes it's just like asking kindly.
I wish you would make those 500 tweets sort of available, even like a self-published book or something. I mean, that would be, I'm not kidding, because I think it's a piece of history that we need to all kind of look at and remind ourselves about what happened. I'm not sure I can scroll through 500 Twitter entries, but if I had a Kindle or a book with pages I could flip through once in a while, I think that could be really important. I mean, maybe at your website or something, you put that out there.
You're not the first one. Many people already asked me if I want to make it a book. So I might consider this, because it would be a big book. And it would be also entertaining, because I would attach my tweets and they make people smile. At least if you're not a Democrat, if you're not a liberal, so they probably don't find it that funny. Well, but at least it's part of history.
But Yeah, this is no longer a liberal, I shouldn't be a liberal conservative kind of thing. There were some major mistakes made. There were people that were harmed. We need to not make those mistakes again. And it's just as simple as that. Now, who made the mistakes? We can add up the score. Okay, I don't really care. I just want to make sure that we are honest about what happened, look at what happened, and not let this happen again. Because it's even worse. I did a podcast today with some friends of mine, and their lives were turned upside down in ways I didn't even realize because, radio ads went down, lost radio jobs, and lost that podcast. Just one thing after another. People's lives were upended unnecessarily. It's one thing if we could point at this stuff and go, look, there were RCTs, there were randomized controlled trial on the masks, on the lockdown, and it worked, and it was a really significant success. It didn't do shit from what I can tell. Maybe a little bit here and there, something here and there. It certainly didn't do more than localized, focused quarantine and lockdown would have done, it seems to me.
And you know what?
The evidence to that is...
You know what I observed? I observed that the same people I was calling out, because I was always going to the profile and checking out what they're saying now. They are now all into the climate stuff. So they drop the one topic and they go up to the next topic saying, oh, we need 15-minute cities. We need climate lockdowns. They continue doing this. So, I mean, if we don't stop them by come up with arguments and like, hey, you've been wrong the last time, I think they will continue. So I think it's very important to look into the past, to use the archive. I mean, the journalist's best friend is the archive. And I made an archive. And every journalist should do this and ask people, okay, what you said back then was totally wrong. So what is your personal conclusion? What is your consequence? Which consequence are you drawing? So I think it's very important to address this. And as you say, it's totally correct. Those people have been calling for lockdowns and have been calling for fear and panic. You've seen this in England with Matt Hancock, that he said like these people should be scared as hell. So I think these people need to be maybe not put to court, because some of this isn't enough, but at least be confronted with what they said so they can maybe do some self-reflection.
They need to learn. They need to perhaps be out of positions of authority, or at very minimum, there need to be proper changes made to curtail their authority. It's pretty simple.
Yeah,
pretty simple. I promise if you put nice tweets out and tag me, I will retweet them. But you have to sort of bring it up. You have to bring up these misadventures, these excesses in ways that can be digested without everybody getting weird and canceling and all that stuff. Because it's not about, because the feeling part of this is completely out of control. As we said, it's like mass formation psychosis. So, all right, very interesting. I must say, I am. I some way I can see those 500 tweets or be a part of amplifying them. I would love to do that, because if they won't look at their mistakes on their own, we have to kind of hold their hand to the fire a bit, and at very minimum raise awareness in the public of how wrong people were, how egregious their behavior is, so they stop listening to them. They need to stop listening to these people. If nothing else, just don't listen to them. All right, let's take a couple calls if you don't mind. Anything else? Did I miss anything in your story before I do go to some callers?
No, I don't know. I mean, there's so much to tell. We could talk for hours, but let's just go to the calls.
Okay. Here is Janice. See if Janice, it takes a second for these calls to lock in, and then they have to unmute the microphone in the lower left-hand corner, and we'll be on with Janice in just a second.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hey. I gotta say two things. I love what you're doing to your guests there. I love it. Second thing, yeah, they do really need to correct stuff. So I'll make it short on this part. A friend of mine's daughter-in-law expecting their first child on the 11th of this month, a little over a month ago, at the urging of her obstetrician, got a booster. Last week, she went in for her weekly checkup because it's getting so close to her due date, and they could not find a heartbeat for that baby.
Yeah.
And they had to induce, and she had to deliver a stillborn baby.
Right.
And what I wanted to say to this gentleman is, yeah, I agree with what he's saying. I love the tweets he put out. And I'd like to ask him, what's it going to take to get these people to admit they were wrong? And personally, when I hear Fauci has croaked, I'm going to throw a party.
Okay, yes. I think you have some similarly minded folk to yourself, Simon, in terms of their feelings about all this. But it really, here is an interesting part of what she brings up. So I interviewed Vicky Mail. She's lovely. She had lots of good data. And the data was weak in two respects, I thought. One was it was very focused on Alpha and Delta and its effect on pregnancy. I really couldn't tease out what was really Omicron from what she was saying. She did address it later in a tweet where she herself tried to tease it out. I still wasn't thoroughly convinced. It seemed too dire. Omicron is such a mild illness that the data didn't fit for me, number one. And on the vaccine side, the data was too rosy. There were no serious side effects, none. I've seen lots of serious side effects. I'm not saying it's commonplace, and most people end up okay. But to say there are no serious side effects. I mean, I personally, as a physician, my patients seen lots of serious side effects. So I worry. This is back to me worrying again about the medical literature. Is it still being adulterated? Are there editorial campaigns with people putting their finger on the scale to make it, and then I see, by the way, what Janice just said, I've got people out there claiming that there's massively increase in stillbirth, mass increase in fertility issues. I'm hearing all this. We're going to talk again. Naomi Wolf, who has 3,500 scientists, reviewed the VAERS data, and she wants to present her data that looks a lot worse. How do I reconcile this data? I'm having the worst time.
It's difficult. For example, if I wanted to publish critical publications, it's close to impossible. But if you're part of the group, part of the pro-COVID group, so the COVID scare group, whatever you call it, they publish in the Lancet, in Nature, like on a weekly basis. So if your name is Peter Hotez, you can publish whatever you want. They will never reject your paper. But for example, the paper I wrote, the vitamin D paper, it got rejected several times before I found a journal, a very high impact journal. So with a good editor who gave me a voice. And the other Bayesian paper also, it was very hard to get it to find a journal. So if you're critical, it's hard to publish your stuff nowadays.
Let's take Peter Hotez as a case in point. Not a bad scientist, not a liar, not someone prone to hyperbole, though he's a pediatrician, not an adult infectious disease doctor. So he has sort of not good judgment as it pertains to adult infectious disease, but he's a good scientist.
I disagree.
What's going on?
I totally disagree, because he's been writing opinion papers. He's been writing papers, and he wrote that those who oppose the vaccine should be treated as terrorists, and that the military should go after them, just like terrorists. So I think this is not scientific. And he made this statement in a scientific paper, and he drew connections to Putin, and whatever he did, it was like super unscientific. Also, prior to the vaccines, I think it was in April 2020, he said like a vaccine against a respiratory virus is a very, very bad idea. It could be dangerous. But then he flip-flopped.
Yep.
He just changed his opinion by 180 degrees, and good scientists don't do that.
Well, I interviewed him in February of 2022, and nice guy, smart guy, and I immediately picked up on he's had concerns about the adult manifestation of the disease that were based on his judgment as a pediatrician. He didn't understand. He was very preoccupied with brain structural changes and things like that happen in adult illnesses of all types and get better spontaneously. But he didn't know that because he's a pediatrician. So you see a brain change in a child, that's a big deal. It's a much different thing than in an adult. And his editorial excesses and misadventures, as you point out, not okay. They're not okay, but it shouldn't. Maybe it adulterated a little bit his behavior as a scientist, but he's a decent scientist. This is not and so do you think that adultery of his anxiety and what a mass formation, whatever it is, would sufficiently affect his judgment as a scientist that all of a sudden he starts publishing things that are, again, with the hand on the scale?
I don't know. I just know that he called me and others terrorists. He calls people who disagree with him anti-Semites right away. So he always does ad hominem. And this is not the way to go. And the terrorism paper was just too much. It was inappropriate. You don't say that those who question the vaccines should be treated like terrorists. I agree. I don't know his former work. I cannot judge it, but I just know what he's been doing the last 2 years, and it's inappropriate.
Yeah. And again, I perceive the discrimination of the unvaccinated.
My thing is, if you ask an adult which one is a sociopath and you ask a child which one is a sociopath, the adult is going to be worse every single time. So pay attention to which one is an adult sociopath compared to a child sociopath. That's all there is to it. I'm confused on why you're confused.
Okay, I'm confused on what that comment was, I must say, Crow, but thank you. But I do, as I've said, I think it is disgusting that people's lives were harmed, that people's careers were ended, that very fine professionals were vilified. It's disgusting. And that average people were discriminated against because they made a choice about what they wanted to do with their body. And I don't want to say they were right in the sense that they shouldn't have taken the vaccine, but they were right in the sense that it didn't prevent the illness and it didn't prevent transmission. Therefore, the discrimination or the justification for the discrimination was completely unfounded. Completely. And none of these people have said, I'm sorry. And that is really, I'm beside myself with that. And I think that's what's generating your... Yeah, so when I read your Twitter, threads, and you talk about yourself as internally radicalized, which I think is a hysterical as description of what happened to you. I'm sorry, but I think it's such a subtle, interesting way to describe it. I understand what you're feeling. I understand it, but personally, I won't be able to retweet any of that stuff unless you bring it down a couple notches. In which case, I'll be happy to do so.
Just for the listeners, anybody has any questions, very factual tweets. So it's just like I have some threads, of course, is to say it's always has to be entertaining. I mean, it's Twitter. It's not my Substack.
And do you have a Substack?
Yeah, drsimon.substack.com. Totally, rational analysis of situations, of things. Very interesting to read. Just subscribe, please.
Okay. And I love the Bayesian reasoning showing up. Hi, Josh. What's going on?
Not much. The first thing before I ask my question, I just saw something on his Twitter page that I just looked at, and he seemed to have called someone a pedophile. I don't think it's Obama but who was the person that's the pedophile?
Oh, you just think about it. I'm not going to say it because, yeah.
I'd rather there's stuff on there. Literally, I'd rather not be said on this show, and so that certainly sounds like something I would not necessarily want to say on the show. And this, opinions are his own. God bless him. Bless his heart. Bless Dr. Goddek's heart.
Thank you.
All right. So my question is basically putting that aside. My question is, if there is culpability for the people that have gotten kicked off Twitter. I'm not saying that there is, but if there is...
What do you mean by culpability?
I mean, in other words, it should have... What, quote unquote, should have occurred, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's debatable, right? I mean, these things did happen. So he was kicked off Twitter. So if that that did happen. So the question is what could be the result if it happened again? I mean, would it happen for a different reason? Is this guy now free to say whatever he wants? He's never going to get kicked off Twitter. Does that make any sense?
Yes, I'm following you. So, and I think underneath Josh's point is now you're unleashing your rage. Should there be any limitations on that? Do you have some ethical obligation to watch what you say, Simon?
Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. It should be all within the law. And I shouldn't offend anyone, of course. But there's a line
you better take down a few
satire
tweets.
Yeah, well, I mean, a child sniffing pedophile. I mean, like, it's obviously a joke, isn't it? I mean, like, people can laugh about it, others don't like it, but it's like,
no, it's funny. It's funny you would say that because I just today had to. I was talking to the guy I work with all the time, Adam Carolla, and he made a very sexist comment sort of under his breath as a joke. And I found myself saying, a sexist would say, to sort of almost like the color guy next to the rapper. But I thought to myself, why did I do that? And I thought, you know why? Because people can't take jokes today. They really are very literal, very concrete. And even if it is clearly intended as comedy, it does not get received that way right now. So be careful.
People are getting offended these days, and I think it's a choice to be offended. So I can be I'm autistic, and there are many people who say like autistic piece of shit, and I just like reply autism intensifies or stuff like that. I think it's important to be able to laugh about yourself, and also to not be offended. I mean, like I never choose to be offended. And if people say like, "Oh, I'm so offended because you made this and this joke," it's like it's not my problem.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Is it possible? Are you what? You don't have to answer any of my questions, but is the autism affect your functioning at all? Do you have any? Are you aware of where the manifestations are?
And what do you mean?
In terms of reading social cues, things like that, because I'm wondering if some of these tweets that I feel uncomfortable with I'm uncomfortable because I'm picking up on some part of something that you're not picking up on. Does that make sense?
I think the problem there is more the 280 characters. So it's very hard to show if whether you're satirical, whether you're making a joke on Twitter. I mean, there's not yet the function that there's a button like, oh, this is a joke, or this is meant in a cynical way. I mean, this tweet was more or less cynical, and I sit there, I laugh about it, and my followers like them too. And I think I have like a mixture of serious, very serious threats, serious tweets. I go into the signs. I said like, if you don't, I do have very serious tweets, and sometimes I just do poke. It was called poking on Facebook, but then poking opinions, like provoking a bit. And I think this is a style that is part of me. I don't know if it's part of my autism or not. I'm a very rational person usually, and I have a very black humor. I don't understand humor, but I have one myself. It's an autistic thing.
Dr. Goddek, if I can ask, are you a user of Reddit or 4chan? Have you used those in the past?
4chan, yes.
Okay, I figured. Okay, now I understand you a lot more. I figured you were going to say yes to that. Okay, it makes a lot more sense now.
What help us? Now help us.
It's a 4chan brand of humor in a way. So it's a lot of the stuff that's said isn't actually 100% serious, but they'll say very, very shocking things like the stuff that he said about the child sniffing person. They'll say that stuff. They're not 100% serious, but anyone who can hear it, who doesn't understand what 4chan is going to take that totally seriously and be really offended. They don't understand that this is part of the internet. Like this is a very internet style of humor. That's been around from the start.
I am at once, and by the way, on Dr. Goddek's behalf, I'm at once intrigued by this entire thing we're sort of uncovering here. And I'm deeply troubled that you get attacked for non-neuronormative sorts of the very things these people claim to want to defend. They're attacking you.
A lot. So there are tweets like, you fucking piece of autistic shit, you should die, they should kill you. It's normal. I get death threats every day on Twitter. So, but I just take it with a smile, because these are like, I call them keyboard warriors. And I mean, what should I do? There's nothing I can do. I take it with humor. Of course, I get slightly offended, but I try not to get offended, because I mean, there's nothing I can do against it. And I mean, what should I do? I just try to, take it with a smile. When people offend you, take it with a smile. It makes your day better.
The last time there are like maybe Caleb can help this too, but the last time I had a tweet like that, I just went on that person's Twitter thread themselves and just said something sort of trolly about them. I just said, I like your bangs. Because she had cute bangs. I just say, I like your bangs back, which is a throwback to Napoleon Dynamite and a fact. And the person just shut up. Because I think these people don't realize what they're doing. If you come back, with a clever remark about something, I don't know. I'm sure that Caleb, can you help us out here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's usually when people are trolling, I'm just extra double nice to them, and then they shut up really quick because they don't know what to do, because they either expect for you to fight back with fire or to like crumple up into a ball. They don't expect you to be like, oh, you must be having a really bad day, or it's like, oh wow, that's hilarious. You just made a joke about me. That's so funny. Like if you just join in with the trolls, then most of the time they leave. Now that's not probably the best thing to do all of the time, with death threats and all of that stuff. But with the internet, especially, knowing that you also have 4chan days in your past, I understand a lot more about the type of humor, and you're not trying to offend people. This is the language of the internet.
You and I are going to have a longer conversation about that. So
Yes.
I'm because this is new territory for me.
I'm always afraid to say the name 4chan though, because it's like Beetlejuice. Like if you say 4chan 3 times, then your stream goes down and you get hacked, and they start trolling.
You already said it like 5 times.
Yeah, yes. I know. So here we go. There goes the stream.
Well, we're almost through. We're making our way towards the exit. Meliu. We'll see this.
Melius.
Hey, Melius. What's happening there? Melius.
How you doing? How you doing, Andrew? How you doing?
Hey there.
I just had a question. For me, I think you started the space talking about the PCR tests, and for me, this is always a big question mark. I do not understand why a test is mandatory for so many things. That is legitimately a medical procedure, not really a test. It has to go past the naval turbinates, which never before I've ever heard anything had to do that. I was always encouraged, every time the naval turbinates were mentioned, it was always in context of not putting anything past them. Why do we have to go so far deep in the nose or in the sinus to collect samples of a virus that's supposed to be so contagious?
Yeah, viral swabs were always deep nasal swabs. I'm imagining that it's in the front part, there's less because of the hairs and more contamination of various types and less penetration of the virus. But I don't know, I'll let see if Dr. Goddek has an answer to that as well.
Well, I'm not an MD, but I think that it's more contagious in the back. I think the mouth would work as well. So I also don't understand.
Mouth does work.
Why the
Throat and mouth.
Exactly. And there's no need to go all the way down the nose just to get the viral load. I mean, like there's even Dr. Zoe Hyde, which I also called out. She was saying we should do anal swab with children at school. So there are even more extremist methods in order to measure the viral load.
Yeah, but it really, he does raise an interesting question, is the seeming ease with which people are subjected to medical procedures and their medical information privacy issues completely violated. In my world, you do a test with really specific circumstances and expectations. Back to your Bayesian reasoning, you don't just, unless it's a screening procedure, which is a kind of a different kind of test. This is a diagnostic procedure. Theoretically, at least, diagnostic procedure, and things like what my status is my business, and whether I've been vaccinated is my business. But all that was completely wiped aside. Again, this is all the excesses. I understand it was an emergency, and I understand our Constitution in particular gives public health officials the ability to swipe aside constitutional privilege. I'm saying I'm not sure we want that to be that way. That at least there should be some second step, something that we put in the way of that, so there isn't this fiat authority by people who really don't have the judgment and clearly don't think in a Bayesian manner or in a risk-reward manner to understand the full impact of the choices they make. What do you say?
I'm totally with you here, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And I even think what was a big crime is what they did to children every day at school, because it hurts a lot. So I think it's not okay what they did. It's more or less, it was abuse to some degree.
And before I let you go, kind of fill me in on the difference between what we experience here was actually different state by state, right? California, New York, the worst. Florida, Texas, not so bad. What was it like in Europe? Was it the same? Were the school closures were nowhere had them nearly so long, did they? As say LA County, which was 2 years. What was it like over there?
A good one, because I went to Brazil very quickly, and I don't know what they've been doing there. I think they installed air filters, and they reduced school days. I think they had 1 day off, 1 day school, something like this. But my mom is a teacher, and she said the children had to do lots of testing, and they heavily suffered. Imagine doing
they didn't have to wear
PCR
masks
test all the time, which is totally unethical. And here in Brazil, people didn't test because it's not a first world country. And I think the tests were not the cheapest. So many people didn't have the money to test every day, every second day. So
then
hardly anyone here didn't test.
In Holland, there must have been no COVID. And in Brazil, there must have been massive deaths of teachers and grandparents passed on by kids. Oh, no, they were the same exact outcome? I'm shocked.
The same exact outcome. So whenever they started with a panic on TV, people died. I know, I call it a panicdemic. It's rising cortisol levels. You as an MD know very well what happens if you're afraid. If you're afraid, and then you have this chronic inflammation, chronic fear.
Yeah,
exactly that. Yeah. Thank you.
It's very never makes anything better. Panic never makes things better. What did FDR got up again? We have nothing but fear itself. So be confident, move forward, do your best, as opposed to hide in place, hide in your bedroom, hide under the bed. No one's ever been told that in the modern era. No one's ever said hide in your room, shelter in place. That is, again, disgusting. Ugh. Anyway.
May I ask a question?
If I missed anything?
Could I ask a real quick question too, Dr. Goddek? I see the people asking these questions a lot in the comments here, and because you're so familiar with the PCR tests and everything, I was wondering if you've seen anything suspicious about the death of Dr. Carrie Mullis and how the timing of it seemed to happen in 2019, like barely months before COVID started. People are saying that certain things seem suspicious about that.
Caleb is my in-house conspiracy theorist. So
while Susan's gone, it's me.
Well, he is the inventor of the test, and he just died before the pandemic started. That's suspicious, but I haven't looked into this case yet, so I can just say it's suspicious. In my opinion, it's suspicious. That's all.
Okay.
Caleb, anything you want to say about that?
No, I was looking. I mean, I see a lot of comments about it, and I haven't looked too deeply into it, but it was just odd to me that he died on August 7 of 2019, and that's right as we're leading into this. And he was a very vocal critic of Dr. Fauci, and he also apparently had said that his PCR test shouldn't even be used in this way. And yet he's gone right before this major pandemic happens that begins to rely on something that he created to use it in ways he didn't even want it in the first place. I just found that
interesting.
Odd.
Yeah, maybe you want to ask people on 4chan.
I'm sure they have thoughts.
Well, we've said it now 6 times, so that will be the end of the show. So with that in mind, before they get to us, I want to thank you for swinging by. I look forward to the 500 most outrageous Twitter what should we call them? Outrages, Twitter excesses, so I can retweet them and comment on them and look at them as a book. I think it's a historical document that could have great value in terms of learning from what was a very confusing and hard to understand experience that captured the world and didn't have to do as much harm as it did, it seemed to me. But that's my humble opinion about that. Anything you'd like to say on parting here?
Thank you for having me.
Nope. Thank you for being here.
No.
We'll look for you at sunfluencer.com and at Goddek et al. On Twitter. And thank you, Dr. Goddek. And for the rest of us, let's put up what's coming up this week. We've got a lot of stuff coming. Let's see. Tomorrow's Dr. William Mackus. Jimmy Dore on Thursday. You've all been asking for that. Robert Kennedy on Monday. Or is that Monday or Tuesday? And then Asim Malhotra coming on back on April 25th. We've got other things brewing here. I have to travel a bit the week of the 11th, 12th, so we may not have as many shows as usual. We'll probably do Monday, Tuesday that week, and then the following week from New York. Also, again, kind of a messed up week schedule-wise. But we've been asking you guys if you have any guests you'd like to suggest. Please do so. I just sent Thomas Binder's name off to our booker to see if there's anything there. She's responding with an "oh my God," so that she must have some ideas about him. Caleb, anything else before we say farewell here?
Oh no, that he was very interesting. I want him to come back. Lots of interesting insight there.
Very interesting. I'm disturbed that I didn't pick up on the autism, and I'm disturbed that he would be discriminated for that. That's really terrible. So, all right, everybody, we will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock Pacific time for Dr. Mackus. See you then with Dr. Kelly Victory. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.
Getting addicted to painkillers is like so
the worst.
Scary. Yeah, I remember
worst.
when I had my wisdom teeth taken out and they gave me hydrocodone, and I just knew how bad it was. When I had to take it, I would make sure to do something unpleasant. So that my brain
look at you with your cognitive sciences.
Would associate hydrocodone. So I took hydrocodone and I went Christmas shopping, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And now every time I think about it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.